Hi, hey everybody. Welcome to the For the Love of Language podcast. I'm EJ.
And I'm Stacy.
And today we're going to do a quick episode on vocal fry.
Yes. So let me just educate our audience real quick about what vocal fry is. So in your mouth hole, down your throat holes, there's multiple holes that go down into your throat. The one that controls where the air is going, well, there's pretty much all there. Anyway, within your throat, you have your vocal folds, all right? And your vocal folds are two little membranes that smack together in very rapidly. In fact, it's so fast it kind of looks slow sometimes.
But if you want to feel it, all you need to do is make a vowel sound or a voiced consonant. So if you like make the letter Z and hold the letter Z in your mouth as opposed to like an S, which is unvoiced, you'll be able to feel the vocal folds vibrating.
Yes. So you touch your throat while you do that, you can feel what that's like. And you can feel your vocal folds flapping around. So those vocal folds, they do a lot. And there's a bunch of different ways you can shape your vocal folds and smash them together to get different sounds. So one of those ways is you can fully voice something, right? So the Z versus the S is like full vocalization versus partial vocalization, but you can also kind of like skiff it a little bit. That's like a weird way to put it. I wish I could just show people, but this is a podcast and I can't show you videos.
I mean, if you speak with vocal fry, I think people would understand.
Okay, I'll give an example.
Familiar with it.
Vocal fry, you've definitely heard it before. So even though you probably haven't seen what it looks like when vocal folds flap together and generate vocal fry, you can look that up, by the way. It's on YouTube. You've definitely heard it before. And it's when people speak and sort of, they usually tack it on the ends of things. They have a little at the end, right?
Like, yeah.
So it's like, yeah. So maybe if you're from the valley, you might maybe add a little vocal fry, just for flavor.
Oh my gosh, so much.
So much vocal fry. So that's what it sounds like. And that's what it is. And there's a bunch of different other phonetic flavors and textures you can add on to your regular speech. And there are a bunch of languages and a bunch of people all over the world who do stuff like this. There's also like breathy voice and other things that can add a little texture and flavor. But when we're talking about like phonetics and phonology, it's like I said, it's just like flavor, but and it doesn't necessarily mean anything in like a purely linguistic context. Like you're not going to see a language, or actually you may. There's very few languages that have a distinction between like a vocal fried and like a clear consonant. Or more often, I think there is like a language out there that will distinguish breathy vowels versus like clear vowels, but vocal fry is not usually a contrastive element in language.
Yeah, I've never heard of it being a contrastive element in language. Like I've mostly heard of it as just like a fun phonetic thing you can do. And
yeah,
I think people talk about it maybe a little bit more in singing. It's also sometimes called creaky voice, though some people make a little bit of a distinction between those as well.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's not really a distinctive linguistic feature, but it is of interest to linguists. And that's mostly because of the like sociocultural aspects behind it. So EJ, I'm going to ask you a question. What do you think of when you hear creaky voice? What is a picture that gets generated in your mind when I say that's totally rad?
I mean, it's the same thing I think of when you have like someone saying like all the time in like a high-pitched voice, like kind of like the Cali girl, teenage girl not super mature necessarily. And that's like, it's terrible for me to stereotype like that. But because you asked, that is like the default image that
Do
comes
you
to my
also maybe
mind.
think of people like Kim Kardashian or other supermodels?
Not really
Not
personally, but
really?
I'm not
Okay.
super familiar with the
That's
Kardashians
fair. That's
myself.
fair.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
They're also iconic. And some people have even like credited them for like the takeoff and popularity of vocal fry. Like a lot of people on TV kind of spurred this. My moderator says I pictured the stereotyped blonde airhead. Yeah. So that's what's really interesting, right? This is just a flavor. This thing that we do, this vocal fry or creaky voice, it's just a texture that we decided to add on to what I'm already saying. But in doing so, I've created a whole different persona. Like you're imagining a fully different person and you have a stereotyped image in your head. And so that means that this little flavor carries meaning with it, right? If you have something and that something generates like an image of something else, then that means it has like some sort of meaning attached to it. There's some sort of semantic, pragmatic, connection that's happening. And so linguists who study creaky voice are looking at, how it's used, why it's used, and who is using it, and the perceptions of people who use it and the perceptions of people who hear it to kind of understand why people are using this in the first place. Now, of course, it can just be like a mistake in your voice, like, oops, my voice just got creaky all of a sudden. Whoops. But there are people who will use it intentionally as a social marker, right? They're grouping themselves with other people who do this, whether that is for status, whether that is for, again, like stereotyping or making fun of a certain group of people. There is like a degree of social status that this type of vocalization uses. And that's really interesting because of how sociolinguistic patterns come about. Do you know about like sociolinguistic change, EJ?
That's a very broad question.
Okay. Well,
do you mean
there's
specifically
certain
to vocal fry, or do you mean like more generally?
More generally. So
Yeah. So I mean, do you want me to
go for it. I want to hear what you have to say. I've been talking a lot.
Yeah, no, if you're talking about sociolinguistic change, like you can just think about the fact that you probably speak differently from your parents or your grandparents, and you probably present yourself differently from them as well. And so it's something where all aspects of your culture and the society that you come from all impact your language, and vice versa. As well, as you learn language, you're learning how to interact with your culture. And sometimes those changes come by in a way that it's like, oh, you don't actually notice. It just kind of naturally happened gradually over time that people started speaking more this way. And sometimes there's a deliberate movement where people say like, hey, I don't feel like I'm being represented by the words Mrs. or Miss, and so let's add the word Ms. to our lexicon and advocate for it and start bringing it into general usage, and then it becomes a normal title. And you have that in all levels of language as well, or people attempting to be prescriptivist and to declare that things should be a certain way. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Depending on how those people are perceived and if people are even aware of how they're speaking.
Yeah.
But yeah, it can happen in all sorts of ways. It's like a super, super broad topic.
It is a super broad topic. But yeah, so sociolinguistic change is something that, like EJ said, happens over time, and it does happen phonetically. So there are certain things where you're incorporating new words or new syntactic structure, but it also happens in like vowel changes and shifts in how people pronounce things, right? Like we say things very differently than Mr. Shakespeare did in his time, right? And there's a reason that we sound different than people in the UK. It's not just distance, it's also a matter of time. And it's also a matter of innovation. So there are some people, and this is something that happened way, way back when English started to sound different between America and the UK. There's like intentional shifts where people will intentionally change what they're saying to like distinguish themselves from other people, but it also kind of happens more subtly. And what's really interesting about phonetic changes and pretty much any language change is there's one very specific demographic where we find new things. Any sort of like new up and coming linguistic changes we find in one very specific demographic. Can you guess what it is?
Teenage girls.
Yup. It's crazy. But for some reason, young females or young female identifying people are often the harbingers of linguistic change.
Harbingers makes it sound very much like a doomsday thing.
Well, okay, for some prescriptivists out there, it is kind of like a doomsday situation. They're like, oh no, not my good old American white male words. How dare.
But for the rest of us, it's like language change is just a natural thing.
Mm-hmm. I know it's really interesting. So to say it's a harbinger, I know that sounds a little ominous, but it's true. It is like the number one place where we see like language changes coming about. Part of that is due to maybe some like scientific bias, but it's also just kind of like a well-known. It's a kind of a well-established thing. Like even like African American slang that then becomes like popularized usually goes through the young teenage girl pipeline. And that sounds weird to say, but once it kind of hits, once it gets past like being used by young teenage girls and everybody's using it, like it's kind of like the point of no return, you know? And so when it comes to things like vocal fry, we have a very clear image in our heads of like what that means and who is using it. And it is those like young teenage girls or like a certain woman of a certain background, you know, but it's becoming more and more popular and it's just kind of becoming incorporated into our society to just have a little vocal fry here and there at the ends of things. And some people don't even notice it because it's becoming normalized.
Right. Or because you don't know what it is, you just don't really think about it.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Like a lot of linguistics is subconscious.
It's
in
so
the actual
subconscious.
utterance.
Yes.
Mhm.
So again, some of this is kind of like overt, like the fact that the Kardashians use vocal fry and kind of found a way to vocally distinguish themselves as part of their brand is definitely like an overt part of like language change, right?
Well, and that raises an interesting point as well, because and I just fried when I said
Hey, I don't care. It's fine. I've been frying all the time. Like I do it constantly and I just don't care anymore.
It's just funny though, because when you're consciously thinking about
I know,
it, then
now
you
you're
notice
like,
yourself doing it.
it's like, oh, what does your tongue taste like? You know, it's one of those things.
Right. But with the Kardashians, like you were saying, is interesting because historically, before like the internet and social media became super popular, which is really only in the last 20 years, you wouldn't have influencers being able to have such a wide reach and being able to like actively say, this is my brand to the entire world, and you can try and imitate or be like me. And so that in and of itself does also change the way that the socio-cultural linguistic changes and some of these things happen and how they're perceived when you have entire brands trying to take hold of them and kind of spread them.
Yeah. No, we've definitely entered a very interesting era, even since, I mean, I took my first sociolinguistic class when I was in undergrad in college. That was back in 2017, 2018. And even then, things are completely different. You know, we've built sociolinguistic theory on very like old models. And some of the patterns are definitely still there. But the fact that now people are so hyper conscious of how they sound and what that adds to their the perception of themselves. Like people are just so constantly aware of how people are seeing them these days that is, it's definitely made a big change in sociolinguistic study.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's one of those things like with fashion, where you have some people going out of their way to make new boundaries, new ideas, and some people are, not the trendsetters or the like inventors, but are still very confident and have their style. And then some people like don't care and kind of reject style, and that in and of itself is a stylistic choice.
Yeah,
the same thing happens with language, where like some people say they don't care, but still by the way that you are presenting yourself, that you are speaking, you are still making stylistic choices, and the things that you choose to change and the things that you just choose to accept as your natural accent or your dialect's way of speaking, to a certain point, those are choices.
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely crazy. You are constantly tailoring people's perception of you by like all of the choices you are or are not making all the time. Don't get too caught up in it. You might have an existential crisis.
Too true.
Please be mindful of that. It can break your brain if you think about it too much, but it's true. Every single thing that we're doing is layering on top of each other. For those who are listening to our podcast, we are also streaming this live. And one of our friends in chat had a good question about vocal fry that I wanted to touch back on, because it kind of goes back to the phonetics of vocal fry.
Yes.
How is vocal fry related to frequency? They say, I notice my vocal fry really kicks in hard when I sing or talk at a lower pitch.
And that is normal. Like vocal fry is generally associated with lower pitches, and that means that the rate of vibration of the vocal folds is actually lower, I believe.
Yeah, so like you said, it does kind of happen at a lower frequency, but that's usually because to get that frying aspect, you do have to relax your vocal folds a little bit, right? And so in relaxing your vocal folds a little bit, you're relaxing like your whole laryngeal system. And so when that happens, you're usually sitting at a bit of a lower register. But of course, there's a lot that plays into everyone's personal frequencies. So, you may have a lower vocal fry, but like someone who has like a shorter vocal tract is going to have like a higher pitch vocal fry. But it's still going to be lower for them, just because to achieve that state of relaxation, you kind of have to dive into those more lower frequencies.
Yeah. So what you're saying is it's not like an absolute frequency that like you hit this frequency and you'll have vocal fry. It's more relative to what your normal tone is based on your actual anatomy when it comes to those vocal folds.
Correct. So, I mean, that's pretty much the same with everything in terms of phonetics. There's no, like, there are some things, there are like ranges that we see, and we kind of have to take that into account in phonetic study because every single vocal tract is different. So you kind of have to consider people with super long vocal tracts and super deep voices, and people with super short vocal tracts and real high pitched voices. But it is relative, but that relaxing aspect is what makes it feel like it's at like a lower frequencies, because you're relaxing your vocal folds.
I kind of want to try doing it at a higher frequency now that you say that, because like when I think about it. Okay, this don't judge me, okay?
No, we're gonna just play around. It's gonna be great.
This is great, right? Like that's pretty low. But then if I try and go higher, like this is great. Like it's actually really hard because the higher pitch, this is great. Like I can't do it at a higher pitch.
This is great.
Like I can do it about here.
It sounds kind of, it is hard to do at a higher pitch.
Yeah.
So I can't blame you. But yeah, it's mostly because it takes a lot of relaxation of your vocal folds to get that fry just right. Because like I said, it's not your vocal folds aren't fully coming together. They're kind of just like barely touching each other. They're like rubbing elbows with one another.
Yeah, well, and when you think about like voicing in general, if you were to increase that frequency so that they're vibrating a lot faster, then you would just end up with normal voicing rather than vocal fry. And so there's something there about like where is that boundary? I'm sure someone has tried to like pinpoint where it is for at least some people.
There's definitely phonetic studies out there. And let me tell you, when it comes to studying phonetics, boundaries are a joke because humans work on categorical perception, but the world exists on a spectrum. So it's more of a matter of perception than actual physiological cutoffs. So I'll tell you that much. It's vocal fry is more what we think we hear it as more than what it physically is, because the line between vocal fry, no voicing and full voicing is it's a spectrum.
Yeah, totally.
So
cool.
Anyway, any other questions or thoughts about vocal fry? Because I think I made my points.
Honestly, I don't think that there's anything else I would really add to that. Like, I think it's good to acknowledge it might end up becoming more of a dialectal thing. And just because I don't know of any languages or we don't know of any languages where it is a contrasting feature doesn't mean that it's not in some places as well. So definitely don't want to generalize just based on our knowledge.
Here's what I'll say about that as my last thoughts. So there are some like linguistic anomalies in terms of phonetics, right? Like there is a variety of Moroccan Berber that has words with only voiceless consonants and no vowels, right? That's a thing that happens. Does that mean the entire language does it? No, it's a bit of an anomaly. It's a thing that can happen, but it's a bit of an anomaly. And I would say it's the same thing with different types of voicing. It's probably out there. I don't have it just right out of my bag as to what languages could have it or do have it. But if so, it's probably used in a limited scale. Like it's not something you're going to see throughout the language, just because perceptually it's not as salient as just like voicing or non-voicing. When it comes to building a language, you want things that are like more crystal clear and distinctive. And so those like exceptions, those things that kind of fall in the middle of the spectrum are much more rare to see. So it's not that they can't exist. It's just that they're probably not going to be in a contrastive sense just because of their perceptual salience.
I do want to pull up an interesting example of something that is tangential to this, but I think it's interesting.
Let's go.
So in Icelandic, Icelanders will sometimes speak while breathing in instead of while breathing out. But I think this is kind of related in the sense that it's not something that they do all the time. Like you could live in Iceland for a couple of years and never hear anyone speaking while breathing in, or you might hear people doing it. And I've heard different Icelanders describe this in different ways and say that there's different reasons for it. Like one Icelander told me like, oh yeah, it's because it's windy. So like when it's super windy, you just speak while breathing in, which is a really interesting justification for me. But in my mind, it's a really interesting thing because like in English, we would never speak while breathing in. And in Icelandic, it's not a contrastive feature of the language. They're not saying anything different, expressing anything different by speaking while breathing in versus by breathing out. But it's just something that they can do, a choice that they can make and that is acceptable, at least in some contexts, in their language.
There you go. Yeah. Absolutely. So like this concept extends to a variety of different things. And I appreciate you sharing that. I didn't know that about Icelandic.
Yeah, it's a fun one.
It is a fun one. So if you do hear these flavors, whatever your perceptions are, just kind of like roll with it. It could be the harbinger of linguistic change. It could just be an identifying marker of a subgroup. Either way, it's a fun kind of like phonetic phenomenon.
And you might be doing it sometimes without even realizing it yourself. So it's a cool thing to be aware of.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
Anyway, please follow us. Thank you for joining us. And please follow us at For the Love of Language on Instagram. We would love to hear from you if you have questions, thoughts, ideas, your perspectives on things. We're also streaming on Twitch for the time being. So feel free to be sure to follow us on Instagram so you can see when we're going to be live. So you can come and hang out with us when we bullshit before and after the episode. It's great.
Awesome. Well, till next time then.
Bye.